And we're live. Woo! How to stop clients from asking for more and more changes. You thought the project was done, or at least it should be done by now, and yet somehow it's not. There's another request in your inbox. There's another, can we get this done? Oh, what about this? And then there's delays. There's asks. It seems to never end. How can you get this thing over the finish line and stop these clients from asking for more and more stuff so you can get on to what matters to you, your business? Hey everyone, this is Acacia Thornton, the CEO, legal coach, longtime business advisor, and attorney. And this is the Aligned Business Series, where we go live 3 times a week, telling you real client stories that are happening to business owners out there and what we did to solve it. And then we go let you ask your Q&A, live Q&A. I'm going to answer your questions. So find your chat button and make sure you get them in there. And we will make sure that there's solutions for you, because that's one thing that matters, is seeing what's happening in other businesses, but also how are they solving it? What is available to us as solutions, not just things to ponder and lose our time, spin our wheels over. So let's get going on today's, because you have sent that file, right? Or you've set that deliverable. You're ready to be done. But then your client comes and asks for one more change. And you want it to be done because they keep asking for somehow everything. And you're just like, no, this isn't reasonable anymore. This isn't a reasonable timeline. This isn't a reasonable ask. Or maybe at first it was just like, it's not included, but it's not unreasonable. I kind of get why they're asking that. Let me help. I want to be supportive. But eventually we all have a tipping point, and the business has its tipping points, as we'll see here in a second. And this isn't just frustrating. It's revenue sabotage. Yeah, that's what we're going to see here, is that it's revenue sabotage because there's no shared understanding of what is included, what's extra. And there's no clear finish line. So many times I talk to business owners, or they send me the templates that they're working off of, and they're like, yeah, okay, you see, I listed the milestones. I listed what is, included, but you didn't list where the boundaries are. And as we'll see, oftentimes, especially if you're doing customer, you want to list more than one boundary and what happens after. And I will show you in this call how to do that. You'll be able to just copy paste it right into your agreement. Because here's the truth, it's actually not malicious from your clients. As frustrating as it is, as much as we think, how can they think this is normal? They are. They do. And so it's just that they're untrained. There's a lack of clarity. And you don't have to wait till you're at your tipping point to start to communicate and enforce, because let's be honest, it's the hardest time to do it. When you're frustrated and you want to just get on with things, or you're overwhelmed and stressed, now's not the time to be like, okay, let's talk about this in a Zen way. That's just not the mindset we're in. So anything we can do to get ourselves there from the very beginning and keep us there, but not just us, the client. Believe it or not, what you're going to see today helps the client stay reasonable, understanding, and feel happier and better throughout the relationship. Because what you need to do is actually train and guide them, but you don't have to be the one to do it. It's kind of cool. So why is this all bad for a business? Let's just even stop before we get to the client story, because I'm going to tell you a client story here in a second. And you're losing bill of hours. Every ounce of energy you give to something that isn't bringing in revenue is a loss of energy to revenue. And it doesn't matter what it is. If it's writing an extra email, reading an extra email, stressing or thinking about how to handle this, that big sigh you just took. These are all things that are taking away from your billables. You're also delaying your new projects. You can't get to something new if you're still stuck on the old. If you only have the capacity to handle 5 clients at a time, and one of those clients keeps lingering, well, that's a spot you can't get filled. And if you've ever heard me talk about the time I was a waitress through college, that's how I got through college, is I was a waitress. And I learned pretty early on that in my lunch rush, I only had 5 tables. That's what I had. My lot was 5 tables. And what I ended up doing to double my revenue is I started to realize that the table is going to sit there until they feel done. And what are they here for? They're here for drinks. They're here for great service. They're here for good food. And they want that to be, done in a timely manner and feel satisfied. So I realized that the faster I could get my tables to that feeling of done and satisfaction, the faster they would open up that table, open up that spot for a new client, and somebody else could come in. So my lunch rushes would maybe be only an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and I had 5 tables. So if my tables are sitting there for an hour and a half, I only get that extra 30 minutes at the end to maybe get a few extra lingering tables. But if I can get those tables to feel happy and satisfied within 45 minutes, I can double my revenue. And that's what happens here when your clients are asking for more and more changes. Is that the spot that you can't get somebody else to give you revenue? Because you're not getting more revenue by doing these extra changes or handling the asks. You're overgiving. You're overgiving instead of upselling, which I'll show you here in a second, how you can upsell in this situation without it feeling like an upsell, in a way that the client actually wants to say yes to it. You're draining your capacity for actual growth in your business. And worst of all, you're starting to resent the work you love. The way you feel about your business matters. So let me tell you a story about one of my consulting clients, and then we will get into the root cause and how do we solve this, how to stop those clients from asking for more and more changes. So over the years, I've supported a number of consulting companies, and this one had signed about a 2-month project with their client. And their client was like, we're really excited to hire somebody who really knows what they're doing because we need a little hand-holding, and we want this project to be great. It's the first time we're doing it, so we want your expertise. And the consulting company was like, of course, happy to work with you. We do this stuff all the time. Here's the scope of work. Here's what the deliverables are. Here's what the timeline's going to be. Everyone's like, yes, sign that, and they start working. But as they would start to deliver milestone 1, the customer would be like, yeah, okay, good. We'll go and implement this now. And then my client would go on to milestone 2, right? That's what you do. And the client would then come back mid milestone 2, be like, hey, for milestone 1, we need it changed to look like this now. Can you go back and do that? So they do that, and they would then return back to working on milestone 2. And then their client would come back again about milestone 1. Hey, we're trying to implement this other team. They need this now. And all these little changes. So it's still the same deliverable. The deliverable hasn't necessarily changed, milestone 1 and milestone 2 and so on. It's just every time the client would take that deliverable and go a step further with it, they needed something else. A change, a format, remove, whatever, right? These little things. And eventually this goes on and on and on every single milestone. My consulting client is feeling like they're taking 1 step forward and then 2 steps back every time. It was supposed to be a 2-month project. 2-month project. At around month 6 is when they come to me. And they're like, Acacia, we've got to get this off our plate. We've had to say no to other business. We're not making any more revenue here. We're still within the original scope of work that was promised. We haven't gotten these deliverables to them. We need to get these deliverables to them so we can get this done with, but we can't do that if they keep asking for changes. What do we do? Okay. This did not happen because of bad intentions. The consulting company thought they understood the scope of work, thought they had communicated everything they were going to deliver and how they do business. And then their client was like, we want the hand-holding, we want customization, we want all these things. So they thought they had communicated. Everyone thought they were on the same page. But there were no clear rules for how the whole thing was going to happen. Because there was a lack of what was included, what's not included. And then what happens when the client wants more? How do we keep things on deadline? When is milestone 1 officially done to where you can't come back and ask for changes anymore, even though we're still mid-project? When it's done. And then finally, when do we actually get to, hey, here's a delivery of it. Now this triggers payment. Because I had this happen with another client where they delivered everything. Their client started to implement it, paid for the final invoice, all was good. Their client came back months later. It was like 4 or 6 months later. It was near the end of the year, saying, hey, we're ready for our revisions now. And my client, I think this was a design client, they were like, we finished that back in March. It's November. Like, you don't get Like, what do you mean your revisions? Look, we under the contract says we get 2 revisions. So you can kind of see how without clear rules, we need more than milestones and deliverables. So how do we do this? 2 key things are going to happen. To stop the client asking for more and more changes, we need to tell them how many changes they get, the timelines that's on, and what happens when they cross it. And this is the power of a scope creep clause. I'm going to show you 2 things because these 2 clauses together are a powerhouse. They keep things on track for deadlines, tell you where the boundary is, and they get you paid. So the first one is a scope creep clause. Now, what is a scope creep clause? Scope creep clause says not only what's included, but where the boundary is and what happens when you cross the boundary. And what happens when you cross the boundary. And it's not a punishment. It's not, oh, you've crossed the boundaries asking for more changes. It's here's the value exchange for that extra ask. And why this is important to your client relationships. I'm going to show you here in a second how you can get a scope creep clause. So I see some of your questions coming in. Hey, James. Don't worry. Of course, I got you. You will have everything you need to implement these today. The scope creep clause, doing that is it lets your client know that they are empowered to make better decisions. Hey, I get 2 revisions. If I need a 3rd, this is my choice. My choice is pay this value, or I have to figure out how to get this done within my 2 revisions. See, it empowers them to make a decision, because when they don't have to make a decision, one that weighs a value exchange for them, right? That's a value exchange. Now they're enticed. Where if you're just like, oh, there's 2 revisions, they could be like, well, I can always ask for more. She's really nice. She's not going to say no. Or she'll probably do it. And, she's always available to me. That's different. The value exchange happening inside of them is different. So the power of a scope creep clause is it says, here is the line. Here's what's included. Here's where the line is. And here's the value exchange. And that value exchange can be we need more time. That value exchange can be it's going to cost you more. It can be anything you need it to be. Hey, your retainer's gone if this happens. You can do whatever you want. And it turns just one more, into a paid add-on respectfully. Because now your client knows they can make the choice. You're not getting in there frustrated, like, well, if you do this one more time, I'm going to start charging you. That's not cool. Doesn't sound great. Nobody wants to hear that on the other end. But if you have something in your client agreement right up front, this is where your client and you agreed how you're going to proceed, what you're going to do. And it gives everybody permission to proceed this way, to hold this boundary and to grow your revenue by doing what you all agreed to in the beginning. It also is great when you're stressed out because now you don't have to figure out what to say, how to say it, where to bring the boundary, how do I communicate it? Do I get them to let your client agreement, your templates do the work for you. Let them communicate how you do business and represent you to where all you have to do is remind the client it's there. Hey, client, we've got 1 revision left. Happy to do additional ones, but just want to let you know it's going to be an extra $250 each. Let me know how you want to proceed on this one or if you're ready to give final approval. Right? Pretty amazing. So scope creep clauses, I always recommend that you have a number of them. Have one for every single thing in your business your client can ask for more on, okay? And then I want you to also do, I'm going to share something with you guys. Sorry, I'm sharing something with you right now. So this is the scope creep clause guide. This is the one where it's got all the different scope creep clauses in it. I go through ones for coaches. I go through one for design, for consulting, for general services. All of that you get, I think it's 12 different examples of all of them. So if you ever want them or need them, they're in there. And then you're also going to get a worksheet in there on how to make one for yourself. So no matter what type of business you're in, no matter what type of deliverables, service, or products you offer, there is a customization sheet in there. So that's the scope creep clause playbook. So that's what the scope creep clause says. Now I've told you there's something else that combines with it. It's called an acceptance clause. Acceptance clauses. Acceptance clause says if you don't respond by this amount of time, it's considered approved. And this would have helped the consulting company crazily, because it would have said you only have 7 days to approve milestone 1 and get revisions. After those 7 days, dear client, you can't go back and change and reopen milestone 1. We are collectively going to be on milestone 2. It keeps the project moving. It says exactly where the finish line is for every step and phase of the way. And that finish line is really important, because that finish line means you get paid. You guys have probably heard me talk about the story with my designer where the guy just ghosted her. She sends the final deliverable and the guy ghosts her. She got paid like 6 months later. 6 months later, even though it was due when she delivered, because this guy used ghosting. And the acceptance clause fixes all of that. It says if you don't respond by this amount of time, this is the finish line. It happens no matter what you do, client. Whether you send me a revision, whether you ghost me, whether you drag things out, finish line is the finish line. And then it's going to trigger that final payment, the project close, but also your emotional closure. Because you now know that done is done. You know when done is going to happen thanks to your acceptance clause. And then your scope creep clause says, client, if you go beyond this, if you need more here, happy to support you in it. I want you to keep coming to me with your questions. I want you to keep coming to me with your asks. Client, we want that repeat business, but we also don't want to give it away for free. And that's what the scope creep clause says. The scope creep clause is where you start to really get paid, because that's the sort of the upsell without it being an upsell, right? So the copy paste clause guide, that's your scope creep clause playbook. That's what's going to be in there. Like I said, you're going to get an actual real world scope creep clauses. You can just copy paste right in. You'll also see how to customize one for your business. So you can do that. Now I already see the questions coming in. So if anybody has your questions, let's go ahead and get these into the chat. What do we have here? Hey, Emily. Yes. Love you too, girl. Love you too. James. Can I use this if I bill hourly, or is it only for flat fee packages? Both scope creep and acceptance clauses can be used in every single business type, even physical products. They work best in service providing, but they technically apply to every single business. And they're never going to be in your generic contracts. Templates that you get online are an AI because they have to be customized for you. So no matter what you do, you can use these. What you do is you just simply say, hey, instead of it being, $2,000 includes these things, your add-ons are this, or if you go beyond it, this is your scope creep. And then what you charge for that, your value exchange for the scope creep, can be anything you want it to be. It can be a flat rate. It can be an hourly rate. It can be an hourly rate plus time. And these are yours to make in your business, right? So what value exchange do you want? What do you need? It does not matter how you bill. You can absolutely use these in any and every business agreement. Yeah, great question. Emily, can I add a scope creep clause mid-project? Okay, can I add a scope creep clause mid-project? And what I would say is yes, but no. Hear me out on this. Okay. So what you do is first, if you're having scope creep issues, get the clauses, update your templates, right? That way, every client moving forward, this isn't going to happen again. And then for the existing clients you have that you're mid-project, look, you can't unilaterally change the client agreement mid-project. You would have to do an amendment and both parties sign, which is possible, but not always worth it. Here's what I would recommend instead is start to lay the foundation as you do it, right? Like I said, hey, client, you get, let's say you're delivering milestone 2. Milestone 2, here's the deliverable. At this phase, client, we like to keep things on a 7-day turnaround so we can make sure we hit your deadlines, get you what you need. I always like to say, communicate the value to your client and how this boundary helps them. By staying on a 7-day turnaround, we do this. But if you need extra time, here's the value exchange. or we usually include only one revision at this phase. And we can do extra revisions, but they're going to be charged at around $250 an hour. So you can lay that in the emails of the communication as you are dropping the deliverables and milestones to them. You can do it that way. Why it's better in your contracts is, one, it's upfront. It's upfront. Everybody knows from the very, very beginning. But two, it becomes legally enforceable. It's not legally enforceable if you're just adding it to your emails. It becomes guidance. But that guidance is still better than silence. Silence leads to limbo. Clarity gets things moving in on time. So can you add it mid-project? Not a literal scope creep clause, but you can use kind of your phrasing from it. Go write one, put it into your template, and then use that a variation of it in your emails as you deliver. Even if once you put one in your contract, it's still just advisable and easier on your clients to give those friendly reminders along the way. Anyways, let's see. Amanda, how do I charge extra without feeling greedy? Okay. I love this question because this question comes with two things. How do I charge extra without feeling greedy? First, why are you feeling greedy? When you planned out your give here, let's say you were giving a $5,000 coaching package, you anticipated so much time on the phone with them and in calls, so much support time and hours, and maybe some worksheets, right? You had a value exchange. Why is it that suddenly now when they need more on the back end or mid-project, the value of those things goes down? In the beginning, a call with you was worth $500. But now on the back end, a call with you is free. The value of your time and your expertise has not changed from the beginning of the project to the end of the project. Who you are and what you bring matters equally the whole way. That's what a business is. It's a value exchange. So I would first look at what about you internally is making you feel guilty, because your clients aren't coming being like, I'm going to ask this, I want to feel guilty. They don't know that's the way you're feeling. So explore that as a business owner and see how that's affecting you personally and your leadership and maybe your revenue, but also look at it from the business perspective of a value exchange, that there is nothing different about who you are, your expertise, what you bring, and the value of your time, your resources, and everything you've created at the beginning of the project versus near the end. So no reason to ever feel greedy for asking for a fair value exchange for what you do and who you are. David, is this different from what is in Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose? David, I love this. Okay, so some of you, because I know some of you have been on my calls before. Okay. Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose. Yes, that is one of my main programs, Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose. And what that is it's got the 3 modules. And each module, walked through the video, it's the playbook, but also the toolkit. It's even bigger and better. And module 1 is scope, is acceptance clauses. Module 2 is scope creep, and module 3 is termination clauses. So it is making an entire project, an entire relationship, your entire client agreement, something that brings you those aligned clients, keeps your relationships with them aligned, and gets you paid bigger, better, faster with purpose. So Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose is an entire program. It's the whole overhaul. What I've got on the screen right now is the scope creep playbook. So this is just a piece. Now this playbook is in Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose. So you do get it there. But this is just the clauses, right? I want you guys to be able to do this right here, right now. And so this is the clauses and how to get one for yourself that you can just copy paste in here in like 5 minutes, like nothing. Where Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose is the whole shebang. This is how you really, really have amazing relationships with your clients, where everything is clear, every boundary is set, and everybody's on the same page, paying each other and having value exchanges that are amazing. So yeah, this on the screen, just the scope creep clauses. And then so you can get that in today, and then the Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose is everything. It's everything, yeah. So slight difference. You do get the scope creep playbook in Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose, yes. Okay, let's see. What if I feel responsible for the results, even if it's not in scope. This happens a lot. I'm glad you asked this question. Okay, what if I feel responsible for the results even though it's not in scope? Let's look back to the consulting company story I told you today, right? The consulting company said that they were willing to customize and deliver these milestones, these types of deliverables, these services, this way, this level of customization on this timeline. Okay, what they did not promise was that the client is going to be able to utilize it in all these extra ways. They did not promise the client could also do all these extra things. They are not responsible for what the client then does with it, because outcomes are not within your control. Same when you design a logo or a website for your client. You're not responsible now if that website gets traffic. You're not responsible if that logo becomes some big brand name or not. You promise to design a logo to these certain ways, set up a website to this, not the outcome. And I also see this when I have clients who do like marketing materials. They'll design ads and social media stuff. And then their clients come back and like, well, it didn't go viral. It's like, well, that's not what you purchased from me. That's not what I promised you. So understanding that results are different than deliverables. The product and your services are not the results. And making sure we have that clear boundary. This is what I agreed to in the value exchange. This money for this time, these deliverables, these products. What you do with them, client, is completely up to you. Or you give them guidelines if you have a licensing agreement, right? You can only do these types of things. But I am not responsible for how that comes out on your end. So the key is to make sure that you're responsible for what you promise to do and bring, but not for what is not. If it's not within scope that they're going to go viral, then that is not what you promised them. Versus if you said in your sales pitch, I make everybody go viral. Well, okay, you've laid the foundation that the results are part of it. So feeling the responsible, knowing that that's actually not part of most businesses. Results, there are some result-based businesses, right? I'm going to get this much traffic. I'm going to do this outcome. But majority of the time, that's not what you're offering. You're offering your deliverables, your service, your time for the value exchange, not the results. Yep. Okay, I see one more in here. Where was it? How do I know what counts as scope creep and what's just good service? What I like to do here is say it's up to you, but you don't want to find out because you're still because that giving of good service has become overgiving, has become draining, has become a project that's not on time to a client that just doesn't get it, that you're done. So defining this early. And what is nice about having these clauses in your contracts and your agreements is that once they're in there, it's your choice if and when you enforce them. By knowing your boundaries up front, you can decide, this is when I start to feel exhausted. I have one client right now. She actually does what nobody else in her industry will do. She gives away the full value. She actually is so empowering to her clients that they don't need her anymore. That's how much she empowers them. And I was like, girl, that's insane. But I could just tell it was in her heart. This is how she wanted to do business. This was important to her. And so I was like, okay, we're not taking it away. Anything that feels empowered to who you are and how you want to serve your clients, that's important because you need to feel fulfilled, but you also need to make sure that who you are is fulfilling your clients' reason for coming to you. And that was part of it. So what we did is we decided that let's make this part of her agreement, that this is part of the deliverables, but it doesn't have to be in perpetuity. Or it doesn't have to be all these other extra ways. Where was her internal tipping point? And she's like, yeah, I actually like to do this way and this way. But when it comes to this, that does start to feel a little draining. That does start to do this. So we started to add scope creep in there and just say, hey, let's include it. Let's include it. It's okay to include it just because your competitors don't. And it might be silly to some people. It was in her heart. So we found a way to include that and then put a boundary where it was going to start to drain her or start to drain her revenue, those things. And then now she gets a value exchange where it's meant for her. So knowing what counts as scope creep and what's good service is what feels right to you. These are your boundaries. These are why you're not going to find these in generic contract clause, AI contracts and generic contracts you find online, is because they have to be yours. They have to be yours. You are the only one who can write them. You're the only one who can implement them. All right, we are at time. Tomorrow we have how to keep custom projects from turning into endless unpaid work. Friday is what to do when your client ghosts you after you send the project. You're waiting on approval. You need that payment. Hello, where are you? I don't have time to chase you. And don't forget, if you want those scope creep clauses right there on the screen.